Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to call the meeting to order, that being the regular council meeting of Warwick Township Council, January 29th, 2024. And of course, we start at 3:30. Remind council of disclosure of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest. Does anybody have any conflict of interest they'd like to declare at this time? Seeing none. I'll also like to welcome everybody who's tuning in through Warwick Township YouTube link. And now I'm going to do the acknowledgements of ancestral lands. We acknowledge that the land on which we are gathered here today, Township of Warwick, is located on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, as well as the many Indigenous nations in Ontario whose footsteps have marked them for centuries. We also wish to acknowledge that we are situated on Treaty 29 and Treaty 25 territories signed by Chippewa chiefs and offer our respect and gratitude for these lands. Let's go to number 5, council, if we could. That's minutes of the previous council meeting, those being the minutes of the January 8th, 2024 meeting. Did anybody have any questions on those minutes? Seeing none. Thank you. That's moved by Councillor Morris, seconded by Councillor Manning. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And there's no business arising from those meetings. Madam Clerk?
There's not.
Thank you very much. Let's go to 7 if we can. Council 7A is the schedule of meetings and events. And 7A, does anybody have any questions on those particular meetings? We do have one for everybody else. I'll turn it over to you, Amanda. That would be the date for a special council meeting on the waste management situation.
Thank you, Mayor Case. So 2 agenda or meeting items. The first is we're hoping to schedule a special council meeting on waste management items and proposed we have Monday, February 5th or Thursday, February 8th. I have heard back and from the respondents from a few of the attendees, and it does seem there is a preference for Thursday, February 8th at 3 p.m. If that can work for all members of council, we would love to pass a resolution, and of course, we will complete public notice.
Looking for comments, just Councillor Manning. So that meeting would be just 3:30 then, and we're looking at the 8th then. Does that work for everybody? Okay, very good. So we'll make that meeting. So do you want a resolution to have that meeting on that date, Madam Clerk? Yes. Who would like to do the honors? Councillor Morris, Councillor Westgate is seconding that. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. 7B is just some other meetings and events that are coming up as well, council, for information purposes. If there's anything there that you have any questions on, please contact the clerk or the deputy clerk. Let's go to number 8 if we can. Oh, sorry, Councillor Westgate.
One on the 26th. What was that? Both Wayne and I will be away.
So there's a conflict on that date for both you gentlemen. Amanda, do you want to answer that question, please?
Thank you, Mayor Case. The meeting scheduled for Monday, February 26th is a quarterly special council meeting. It's a held meeting in our annual calendar of meetings. And at this point, we do not have any specific content geared towards that meeting. So if council did wish to move or cancel the meeting, we could certainly accommodate that based on attendance.
So being that there's nothing in that place for that meeting, that special meeting at this time, there's no timed events or anything obviously connected to it. What's council's pleasure? We can forego that meeting and we can pick up on the rest of that business at the very next regular council meeting. Councillor Morris.
I think we can forego it. Our next meeting is just a week away on March 4th, so it's only a week. That's my opinion.
Very good. I guess looking for consensus within the room. Is everybody okay with forgoing that meeting? So do you need a motion, Madam Clerk, or can we just send a public notice that that meeting will be canceled?
Motion.
Okay, let's do a motion that we forgo that meeting. Who'd like to do it? Councillor Westgate is moving it. Seconded by Councillor Manning. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thanks for bringing that to our attention. Councillor Morris, Councillor Westgate. Let's go to councillor commitments and items. Commitment dates. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add? I know we just tackled this last week at budget. Did anybody have anything you want to add? Councillor Westgate. July 12th and 19th. Very good, sir. Anybody else? Nothing at this time? Very good. Let's go to councilors' items. I'm going to start with Councillor Westgate. Do you have anything for council today, Councillor Westgate?
No, I have nothing.
Councillor Morris?
I have nothing.
Councillor Manning?
Nothing today, thank you.
Just quickly, and we'll update the public on a couple of the other meetings we had at Roma. Just want to let the public know that we did meet with the Minister of Environment at Roma at the conference to discuss the ongoing issues around the landfill from an environmental standpoint and from an EA standpoint. And also wanted to let the public know that we met with the Minister of Energy's office to discuss natural gas expansion in our community, as well as the lack of three-phase hydro. The meetings went very well. I do believe we were heard. Again, though, when you're working with the province, it's always a work in progress. So thank you very much for that. Let's go to 9A. That's a verbal update from Amanda Gubbles, our CAO, on submission of 2023 Township of Warwick Annual Energy Compliance Report. Amanda.
Thank you, Mayor Case. I just wanted to ensure that I shared with council that the Township of Warwick's 2023 Annual Emergency Compliance Report was submitted to the Province of Ontario and the Emergency Management Group prior to the deadline of December 31st. We have now completed preliminary review of that report through the province, and I was verbally advised that we will be recommended for approval. However, it does take some time for Emergency Management Ontario to go through the formal approval process, but just wanted to make you aware that it seems to be on track.
All right, thank you, Amanda. We'll go to 9B, and that's a verbal update from Ryan Chammy, our Parks and Recreation Manager, on a film premiere that's going on, and there is a poster attached within your package, Councillor. So Ryan, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Case. Just a quick update on this exciting event happening in Warwick Township. The Township of Warwick, Our Journey Through Time. This is a film by Paul Janes. Premiere will take place on February 17th with two screenings. So one at the Warwick Community Center at 1 p.m. and the second, same day, February 17th at the ELCC at 6:30. Premiere is open to the community and free to attend. There'll be light refreshments and popcorn. The film, created by Paul Janes, covers the history of Warwick between 1832 and 1952. Paul and his team worked tirelessly over the past 3+ years, and the project's funded in part by Township. It's supported by this council, and the County of Lambton Creative Community Grant also provided funding for Paul to complete this project. A formal invitation will be provided to all members of this council, as well as the previous term of council. So you'll see that in the next day or two. That will come directly from myself on behalf of Paul Janes. And yeah, we just extend this invitation to the entire community, and you can find more information and details on the township website.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Ryan. I don't see any questions or comments. As well explained. Yes, Councillor Manning.
Just a quick comment. I was privy to get a sneak peek at this from Paul, and I'd recommend this to all the township members and any history lovers and anything like that. It's very well done, and I think it's gonna be very enjoyable. So I'd recommend this to everybody to get out and see this.
Well, thank you for that, Councillor Manning. And we do know the history of the James family in our community with the history books and stuff like that as well. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for those comments. What we're going to do, sorry, Councillor Morris.
Ryan, is there any other opportunities to watch this if you're not available for people that aren't available on the 17th? Is it going to be on something we can get at through the internet or?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Morris. That's a great question, and certainly one that we can further look into. But yeah, absolutely, this film will be available through other means, through other platforms. But those specific details haven't quite been worked out. But I'll certainly, on behalf of the township and Parks and Recreation, discuss that directly with Paul Janes, and we'll figure out the best platform moving forward, and can keep everybody here and the community up to date on that process.
All right. Any more questions or comments for Ryan on this piece of business? All right. So what I'm going to do, council, is I'm going to leave 9C. We do have timed events today, and our next one, we're right on time, is our delegation timed events. And the next one is Chris Lehrman from Spreets and Associates on Bridge Culvert Study Presentation. So Chris is, I believe, with us, is he not, Amanda? Yes. So Chris, welcome. Can you hear us? Oh, just joining? Okay, I'll give Chris a second to join us.
Recording in progress.
All right, Chris, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Very good, Chris. Welcome. And you have a presentation for us. So as always, I'll turn the floor over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. As you know, the bridge and culvert inspections are required from municipalities. Sorry, start my video. I will start over. To clarify, municipalities are required to prepare bridge and culvert inspections for structures 3-meter diameter or larger every 2 years. That was the purpose of this investigation. Documents provided by Spreet for this, 2 of which I believe you have from Amanda in preparation for this meeting. The third is a rather large 3-inch thick binder, which we've provided Andrew Maver. It summarizes the inspection reports for the 50 or 60 structures, including photos, findings, cost estimates for repairs and rehabilitation as well. What the task entails is an on-site inspection and assessment of all bridges and culverts, 3-meter diameter or larger. We assess the condition, safety issues, required upgrades, as well as rehabilitation costs and related timing thereof. One of the 2 documents you have, I believe, was highlighted in yellow. It's called Summary of Recommended Work. It's a fairly generic chart. It lists all of the structures, 1 through 65, and it highlights our findings as well as recommended works and the timeline. The second document you have is a bit more specific. It's something we've started in the last 5 or 10 years at least. It's a 5-year projection of the projects we recommend are constructed and essentially in what order based on our findings. We've given a 5-year projection, trying to somewhat keep the cost amounts per year in line with each other. It's not a perfect science saying which job definitely needs to go first. Sometimes, like roads, they become in various states of disrepair at different stages than others. So as you can see, we've got 2024 through 2028 in that letter. 2024 includes 1 large structure. Our estimated value for that is $470,000. And it also includes, I believe, 14 or 15 small structures. We don't normally have 14 or 15 in 1 year, but they're all relatively small. And they all encompass essentially, for the bulk at least, safety matters where there are no end markers for these culverts or bridges. So we've suggested tackling those 14 or 15 as well. They have accumulated value of $36,000. Based on your council review, it goes to Andrew Maver, I believe, and then, the design and or tendering and construction of these are put forth. That's essentially what the report is. Yes, if there are any questions, Mayor Case, I'm certainly available.
All right, well, thank you very much, Chris. Did anybody have any questions for Chris on the information provided today? Yes, Councillor Westgate.
On some of these culverts and stuff where we're putting the guardrails up, I get complaints from the farmers that can't get the machinery down the road after. These are code. Do we necessarily have to do a lot of them? Because the farmers, the equipment's getting bigger and bigger all the time, and our side roads, they don't take heads off combines and stuff to go down it. And now I'm starting to get quite a few complaints.
Yeah, that's not a simple thing to answer, but I will certainly do my best. I appreciate equipment does get larger and larger. You really have 2 options. You have standard road allowances along all of these roads, of course. The typical is 66 feet or 20 meters. A lot of these culverts, it's based on the depth from the road to essentially to the ditch bottom. A lot of it is governed by how deep it is, how much of a fall a vehicle can have to govern the requirement of guardrails. So that's the one issue, is how deep the channel is. The second is how wide is the actual platform, and how flat or gradual can we make the side slopes. We do have the ability on certain areas to make the culverts longer, which would essentially be most likely outside of the road allowance width. And now you're constructing on private property, which would let us have a bigger roadway platform and flatter slopes. So that is an option to avoid doing guardrails. It does have its own inherent costs of lengthening the structure, paperwork that's typically required with the adjacent properties as well. So it's not such a simple thing, but it can be reviewed on a case-by-case basis, yes.
Counselor Morris.
Yeah, follow up on Jerry's there. A lot of the equipment can go above the guardrails. It's the end posts that stick up that are a lot of the problem. Do they have to go on the guardrails?
Yeah, the quick answer to that is yes. There are fairly strict guidelines on guide rails, and they actually change quite a bit throughout the years. Some of them are energy attenuators, so when you hit them, they absorb the impact. There are requirements on location, proximity, and height. If you can appreciate, if they're too low, the cars might almost not hit them face on. So you're negating the actual requirement for it. So I would suggest the height is not an item that's flexible at all. It's fairly rigid. The design standards for these are fairly consistent across, well, obviously Ontario for sure. So you can't vary the height of these. As far as I've ever known, the fixtures are set and they're mandated. It's not like you just copy a book, but the guidelines do change from time to time. But the height isn't typically an item that you can get away with. You may have some that you've seen in your lifetime that start off flush with the ground and they essentially come out of the shoulder. Well, we've gotten away from those because they've essentially turned into a ramp for cars to, ramp right up off of. So that's one reason they do have the height they do.
Yeah, it's not quite so much the height of the guardrail, it's the end markers that stick up 3 feet. 3, 4, or 5 feet. Those are the ones that I'm hearing about. The
Okay,
guardrails,
so
they
you-
seem to be able to lift their equipment
Yeah.
and be above it. But it's those end markers that have the yellow and black stripes on it that seem to be the problem.
Okay, that one. I mean, again, if they're too short, people won't see them, and they're not, and the purpose of them is negated as well. It's like stop signs. Sometimes you have certain heights that are governed that we abide by. I can appreciate and I can assure you, several of the safety related items we've just mentioned, the 14 for 2024 alone, I believe half of them are putting these end markers up because people aren't even aware these structures exist. There are no markers at all. I can provide a more accurate response to that, likely in a day or two, if that would satisfy you. I believe it's fairly rigid in location of them and height, but I can clarify that for you.
That would be nice. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, did anybody else have any questions for Chris on his presentation, both verbal and written? Seeing none? Very good. Okay, so anyways, that's information for us. We've just approved our budget with the recommendations of the previous year. These will be recommendations moving forward for council's consideration, and we look forward to chatting with Andrew on these in the future. Could I have a motion to receive and file the report, please, council? Councilor Westgate is moving it, seconded by Councilor Morris. All in favor? That is carried. Well, thank you very much, Chris. We appreciate
You're very
your
welcome.
time. Thank
You're
you. Have a
welcome.
good day. Take
Thank
care.
you, you too.
Okay, council, I'm going to take us back in the agenda if I could, where timed events are still about 10 minutes away, and I'm going to take us to 9C. And that's the verbal update from Trevor Jarrett, our treasurer deputy CAO, on the 2024 municipal insurance program, which there is an increase. So Trevor, if you'd be so kind to bring us up to date, that would be great.
Thank you, Mayor Case. As per the attachment, it gives the details on all the various different assets that are covered and everything else within the policy. We budgeted 10%, we came in at 8%. So there is a savings there of about $6,000.
Okay, well, appreciate that. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Morris.
Just one clarification, Trevor. I was going through it and I can't just find the line right now, but it was death and dismemberment for volunteers. Now, does that include our volunteer firemen?
That includes our volunteer firefighters, and our volunteer firefighters are also covered under the other policy we have. We have one specific for them. So they're covered.
Thank you.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions on this? So from our standpoint, just from information standpoint, Trevor, really, there are still only really a very few insurance companies in the business of providing insurance to municipalities. Maybe you could just give us an update, because it is tough. It's a tough pill to swallow year after year, these large increases when it comes to insurance. Maybe just an update for everybody here and whoever's tuning in on how the process works, how many of them are out there, and really the lack of choice that we really have at the end of the day. If you would be so kind.
Yes, thank you. There's essentially 3 players covering 80% of the market, and then some smaller players. By our comparison, the average from what we were told for the Lambton is 12%. We came in at 8%. And I think a lot of that comes to the fact that we have a very progressive style of measuring and doing some homework on our fleet and all our assets to have assessments done by intact public entities, which brings down our risk profile, which is what it comes down to, is making sure that we can do everything to keep that current. We have looked at perhaps going out to tender in conjunction with other municipalities in the region. However, that hasn't come to fruition yet because no one's seeing any savings. And it's just, again, it's a very small playing field. And until that changes, we're limited.
All right, well, thank you for that. And again, it is frustrating for everybody. There's no doubt about it. When the choices are very limited to what you can do from an insurance standpoint. So thank you for the report. Could I have a motion to receive and file that report, please? The written portion, council. Councillor Manning's moving that, seconded by Councillor Morris. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Let's go ahead. We're still a little bit ahead of our other delegations when it comes to the drains. Let's go to 11 if we could, council, and that's accounts. 11A is the GL report. Did anybody have any questions on the GL report for today? No, say none. How about on the accounts payable? Did anybody have any questions on the accounts payable? Seeing none, then I would entertain a motion to approve both with one motion if council saw fit. Councillor Westgate is moving that, seconded by Councillor Morris. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, gang, I'm going to keep going here. Let's go to the consent agenda, which is 12 on your agenda. So 12A is non-action correspondence. Does anybody have any questions on any of the non-action correspondence? Yes, Councillor Morris.
I actually had 2 I wanted, both concerned the fire department. 1-42, and it speaks of increasing the tax credit for volunteer firemen on their income tax. I'd like to support that motion. It raises their tax credit up a little bit so they don't pay as much income tax on their volunteer fees. That's the one I'd like to make a motion on.
So I think this is something that our staff has looked at and been privy to. Do you want to speak to it, Madam Clerk? Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Case. The Township of Warwick, well, not this specific resolution, has already supported and endorsed the actual resolution from the Ontario Fire Marshal's office. So we've included for council all the other municipalities doing the same thing by providing copies of correspondence, but we have supported already.
Thank you. That's good to hear. The other one was regarding the lifespan of fire apparatus. About asking the government why we need to get rid of fire trucks after a certain amount of time, and that I think that's we went through our budget, and that's a big liability on small communities. I just wondered if anybody else had thought of that motion.
So, Councilor Morris, that is something that's been a bone of contention for quite a few years, where some municipalities and other places in the province don't follow the same guidelines that we have to. And it is something that is rather frustrating. We obviously want to give our firefighters the best of equipment to do their job. There's no doubt about it. But that is something that could be brought up with senior levels of government, the fire marshals. So, I mean, it's something that's been talked about over the years many, many times. Again, but there are mandates in place, as you know, when it comes to pumper trucks and so on, for which we have no choice. We have to keep up with it. And sometimes it's very justifiable, but sometimes those pieces of equipment are very, very new at the end of the day and not used that much. So anybody else want to speak to that particular item? Were you going to make a motion to support that, Councillor, or just for topic of conversation?
I think right now for topic of conversation, it's been put through by the county of Point Edward. And we'll see if we get any more response to it, but I think it is a good cause.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Did anybody else have anything when it comes? Yes, Councillor Westgate.
On 140, the city of Sarnia resolution regarding the carbon tax, I'd like to support that one.
Okay, that is moved by Councillor Westgate. Do we have a seconder on the carbon tax issue? Councillor Morris, any discussion on that? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Anything else on the non-action correspondence, Council? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion then to receive and file the remainder of the correspondence. Councillor Westgate and seconded by Councillor Manning. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. All right, let's go back to timed events. We're literally only a couple minutes away from our fourth quarter revision. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to announce that the next thing on our agenda today, which is 10B Council, is the quarter revision of the Huckwith Drain. The Huckwith Drain 2022, and I'm going to ask for a motion that Warwick Township Council proceed into the quarter revision for the Huckwith Drain Culvert 2022 bylaw number 121/2023. Who would like the motion? Councillor Morris is making a motion, seconded by Councillor Manning. Have any written appeals been received, Madam Clerk?
No, there have not been any.
Does anyone present have any verbal appeals or would like to speak to the issue? Seeing none. Since there are no appeals filed and the following resolution is to be passed. A motion that the quarter revision for the Huckwith Drain Culvert 2022 bylaw number 121/2023 be closed without changes to the report and that we go back into open council. Who would like to do the honors of the motion? Councillor Morris, Councillor Manning is second that. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, Council, we're going to go into our next quarter revision. I need a motion that the Warwick Township Council proceed into the quarter revision for the Welsh Drain 2022 bylaw number 124/2023. Councillor Manning is making the motion, seconded by Councillor Westgate. All in favor? That is carried. Have any written appeals been received, Madam Clerk?
No, they have not been.
Thank you. Does anyone present have any verbal appeals or wish to speak to the drain? Seeing none. Since there are no appeals filed, the following resolution is to be passed. Motion that the quarter revision for the Welsh Drain 2022 bylaw number 124/2023 be closed without changes to the report and that we go back into open session. Who would like to do the honors? Councillor Manning is moving that, seconded by Councillor Westgate. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Okay. So I'm going to ask our next presenters. I'm going to ask Stephen Turner from the County of Lambton, Andrew Taylor, if they would please come up and have a seat. There's two empty seats there, gentlemen. We'll give you a chance to get set up. So Mr. Turner and Mr. Taylor are here today from the Lambton County, and they're going to brief us on the Emergency Medical Services Master Plan. So welcome, gentlemen. The system here that we use, the microphone system, is exactly the same pretty much as we use in the County of Lambton. So what I'm going to do is turn the floor over to you. You hit your microphone and the floor is yours, and the camera will pick you up as well as obviously the audio. So gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Case. I'll just start and leave the presentation to Mr. Turner here. Thank you for having us in attendance today. So through recent reports to County Council, we've informed a business case to modernize the county's land ambulance service delivery model. So Lambton County Council accepted the EMS Master Plan report and recommendations at its meeting on November 29th. And they further instructed staff to circulate the presentation to all the lower tier municipalities for their input and feedback by January the 31st. So our new master plan basically highlights several key areas that will serve to mitigate the impacts of future pressures for increasing call volumes due to our aging population and the anticipated growth in our communities. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to present the 24 to 2028 master plan. And our senior leader here, Mr. Stephen Turner, is going to walk you through the presentation.
Thank you, Andrew. Good afternoon, Mayor Case and members of council. My name is Stephen Turner. I'm the manager of Lambton County Emergency Medical Services. And it's my pleasure to present our master plan, proposing our path forward for the next 5 years. Next slide, please. Lambton County EMS continues to meet its service commitments. However, response times and workloads have been increasing, and these have been noticed by staff, the public, and council. In response, staff embarked on an update to the service master plan with the intent to look back on past performance, spot trends, model future demands, and identify opportunities for improvement. These opportunities include workload, response times, efficiency, and staff wellness. Next slide, please. The master plan had 3 objectives. First, to identify any opportunities to improve the use of the resources we currently have. Second, to identify if our assets are in the right place to best serve the county. And 3, to identify if any additional resources were needed to service demand over the next 5 years. EMS faces several challenges on the road ahead. The most pressing is the fact that our call volume is increasing at a pace that's 24 times the growth of Lambton's population. With an annual call volume growth of 5.9%, over the next 5 years, demand for service will have increased by almost 30%. The lower gray line on this graph demonstrates what our call volume would be if service demand was directly proportional to population growth. The dark blue line represents the projected future call demand. So you can see a fair amount of disparity between those two. Next, please. Ambulance service demand is primarily driven by the medical needs of an aging population. At present, those over age 65 account for more than half of our call volume. However, they represent only 25% of the population. This trend is only going to accelerate in the years ahead. The graph on the left there demonstrates Lambton County's population pyramid. The dark blue bars represent the proportion of the population in each 5-year cohort. The light blue bars represent the proportion of EMS patient population in each of those 5-year bands. So as an example, Lambton County's cohort of 80 to 84-year-olds account for about 3% of the population of Lambton County, but they account for almost 10% of all of EMS calls for service. As a group of residents over age 65 continue to grow older, this will accelerate the rate of increase of our call volume. Added to the pressures of an aging population are those of an increasingly marginalized population. Between 2021 and 2022, Lambton EMS had seen a doubling of calls for service for people who were underhoused or homeless. Our services responded to a growing number of calls for mental health concerns and overdoses. But these challenges are ones that are disproportionately experienced by those who do not have secure shelter. Our service will need to develop new strategies to respond compassionately and effectively to these members of our community. Our main performance indicator is the 90th percentile response time. Our 90th percentile response time for Lambton County as a whole is 13 minutes. But when we drill down to look at trends on a community by community basis, the results are much more variable, ranging from 8 minutes to some communities and upwards of 27 minutes of others in others. So the master plan aims to address these disparities. In fact, in Warwick, our 90th percentile is just around 20 minutes, 19 minutes and 0.17%. Next, please. Unit hour utilization is another one of our key performance indicators. It's the percentage of all service hours that an ambulance is on task. Operators must ensure that there's sufficient capacity to respond to calls while not overworking our crews. The industry standard is generally accepted between 30 to 40%. And in these graphs, you can see that 3 of our stations will surpass the 35% threshold within the next 5 years, and a 4th will follow shortly thereafter. This is the basis for the recommendation to add 3 additional ambulances to service peak demand hours over the next 5-year horizon of the master plan. Thanks. It's also possible to predict the frequency of occurrence where we won't have any ambulances available to send when somebody calls 911. This is called code black. In 2022, this happened 36 times. However, if the current service level remains unchanged with the projected growth in call volume, this will grow to 200 times by the year 2028. The orange line in the graph demonstrates that with the recommended addition of our resources, we can hold the code black frequency and unit hour utilization at roughly the same level as it is now. Another strategy to improve efficiency is to evaluate how and when we move our fleet. And these graphs represent the movement of our fleet to provide balanced coverage in other areas when those stations are sent on calls. In some cases, this movement is beneficial and can help reduce response times. In other circumstances, it can actually worsen response times. We undertook a detailed analysis of these movements and found ways to reduce standbys by 20%. We anticipate this will help improve response times in the rural areas of the county, reduce wear and tear on the fleet and staff, and provide a cost fuel savings in fuel consumption of approximately $50,000 a year. This is a heat map of potentially life-threatening calls over the past 5 years. Lighter dots represent faster response times, darker dots are longer response times. The larger the dot, the more frequency calls occurred in that area. Large dark dots are the areas for our concern. Looking closer in Sarnia East, there's a large volume of calls that experience longer response times. The Brights Grove station is not well positioned to service calls there. It's delayed access to the 402 as well. There's a service gap in Plimpton, Wyoming, especially along the lakeshore, where population growth is occurring. There's a concentration of calls in Kettle and Stony Point. Response times to the First Nation can be delayed on occasion if Forest or Thedford are assigned on calls or standbys in other areas. Port Frank shows a note of calls with longer response times, and the Pinery has a large number of calls with very prolonged response times as well. Thedford and Watford both have ambulance stations within the community, but response times are prolonged here as crews are often on standby assignments in other areas. And while the southeast region of the county is less densely populated, response times to the area can be upward of 30 minutes, owing to Brigden and Watford being frequently assigned on standbys in other communities. The analysis of response times, current and future service demands, population growth, and geography led us to the following proposed changes. Adding 36 hours of service, which will provide 3 ambulances operating 12 hours a day to address the periods of peak demand. Relocating the stations of Brights Grove, Grand Bend, and Thedford to provide better coverage arcs. Constructing new stations, including a headquarters in Sarnia East and new posts in the Kamlaki and near Kamlaki area and near the Pinery. Reallocating daytime Thedford service hours into Forest. The nighttime service hours from Thedford can then be placed where they're most needed, either in Sarnia or in the southeast, once the data is analyzed following the initial changes that are implemented in the first 3 years. As proposed, the number of stations operated by Lambton EMS will not change, but 3 are recommended for relocation. So on the next slide here, we have what new locations would look like as mapped, the current, future with options 1 and 2, and the future in option 3, as noted in plan. Next, please. The proposed relocation of Brights Grove's location to Sarnia Sarnia East provides improved service coverage to Sarnia, the 402, and expands our response coverage arcs while maintaining good response times to Brights Grove and better leveraging the tiered response agreement with Sarnia Fire Rescue Services. The construction of a headquarters will allow the service to bring operations, administration, training, and logistics under the same roof. Next. Lambton EMS currently does not have any assets positioned in Plimpton, Wyoming, but we're seeing service demand growth and slower response times along the lakeshore. Positioning an ambulance in the Kamlaki area helps us to fill a service area gap while producing backup coverage for both Sarnia and Forest stations. Grand Bend is currently located in the upper corner of Lambton County and provides very limited service to areas outside of that community. Its current utilization is around 8%, and it's not often moved to provide standby coverage elsewhere. Relocation closer to the Pinery addresses a significant service gap at the park and Port Franks, while maintaining service coverage to Grand Bend within 10 minutes. This relocation allows the reallocation of Thedford service hours, as the new location would provide 10-minute coverage for Thedford as well. The reallocation of Thedford service hours can be done without compromising response to the community. The Thedford ambulance responds to about 1.2 calls every 24 hours and is frequently sent to Forest for standby coverage, resulting in it being out of community more than 40% of the time. By moving the daytime hours to Forest, we can reduce the fleet movement while maintaining 10-minute coverage from both the Pinery and Forest stations. This will also provide the opportunity to use the 12 hours currently allocated for the very low utilized nighttime hours. So currently there's 10 ambulances staffed on a 24-hour basis and 1 ambulance staffed for 12 daytime hours, providing Lambton with 11 ambulances during peak coverage. Sarnia accounts for 64% of all calls for service, but only has 32% of the EMS resources positioned there. And this results in a significant draw into Sarnia from the rest of the county, as you might have seen from an earlier graph there. The proposed enhancements and relocations will allow 15 ambulances on duty during peak hours, with 47% of peak hours service located in Sarnia. And this will significantly reduce the draw from county stations. Next. The proposed timeline would see the addition of 12 hours of service and the construction of a new station in each of the next 3 years. In the 4th year, once all movements and enhancements have been implemented, then we would take a look at the 12 hours of daytime service from Thedford can be safely relocated to Forest, and we'll evaluate where the remaining 12 hours of service from Thedford should be reallocated based on the results of the strategies in the master plan. The measures within the master plan are ones that we can take locally to improve efficiency. However, there's going to be much need for transformation in how we provide care in the future. Much of this will be dependent on collaboration with our partners in the provincial government. Next. Many people call 911 because they don't know where else to turn for healthcare. However, often the care is not required urgently. We are commonly seen as a gateway into healthcare when few other options in the community exist. Emergency care is one of the most expensive areas in healthcare, so it'll be essential that we do a better job of getting people connected with the right care in the right place in the right time. We can do this by developing better pathways to family doctors rather than emergency departments, or scheduling an appointment with our community paramedics rather than always sending an ambulance right away. Strategies like these will be essential to developing and achieving sustainability where growth in demand far outpaces the growth in our population. Thank you. Entertain any questions if you have them.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you both for coming today. So this came up at Lambton County Council, and we felt it was important to send it out to the local municipalities for comment. It really, in many ways, improves our service here and does not affect the fact that we still have the EMS station in our community. Where it does, obviously, there's some bigger change than some of the other communities to strengthen the service, and I think that's exactly what we tried to do here. The team has actually looked to try to improve the coverage in Lambton County and make it better. So does anybody have any questions on the present? Yes, Councillor Morris.
You mentioned Thedford would be going to help cover Forest. Now, does that mean that the Watford station won't have to go on standby as often to cover Forest?
Through your worship, thank you for the question. Absolutely is the intent. Right now, on slide 11 in there, that graph that showed kind of spaghetti diagram shows how often the crews are sent to other locations. Watford is one of the service locations that's sent into Forest. We have kind of three nodes that we try to protect so when we have diminished coverage. We try to protect Forest, Petrolia, and Sarnia as kind of three central points that allow us to get to most of the county with when we're down to like 3 ambulances. The intention of providing double coverage into Forest, having 2 crews out of there means that there's going to be far less frequency at which we would have to move a truck there to provide standby coverage. And by bringing that truck down a bit further down the lakeshore from Grand Bend, closer to the Pinery, provides a double coverage arc with Forest and the Pinery station over Thedford so that they don't lose any service coverage either. Right now, both I guess Watford and Thedford are out of their station more than 40 and Watford almost 50% of the time. So that's one of the reasons why paradoxically we see long response times in Watford and Warwick despite an ambulance being stationed within the community, is often because it's being drawn out. And it's a double draw too, right? Forest might be drawn into Sarnia, or Petrolia might be drawn into Sarnia, and then Watford gets drawn to Petrolia or Forest to provide that coverage. And so as we keep doing that, then we start to deplete further out in the county. And I think what we'll anticipate to see is that response times, especially in the southeast, if we're able to maintain Brigton and Watford in community more frequently, that will have better response time coverage arcs there as well.
Does anybody else have any questions? So the good news story for us in our community, and we are part of the county, obviously it makes for a stronger system. It lightens up the impact, the load on the Watford station to be able to service our community and some of the communities around us. So I think it's a very good plan, and I give you folks a lot of credit for looking at this. Is a big piece of business for Lambton County Council. Anybody else? Any closing remarks, gentlemen?
This is it, and we really appreciate your time. I think we'd love to hear any comments going forward as well, especially if you have anything over time regarding service and the service levels the community is provided. We aim to provide the best service possible, and we think that this is a roadmap towards a significant improvement.
Well, thank you, Mr. Turner, Mr. Taylor. Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it. Have a good night, gentlemen. Okay, council, I'm going to bring us back to number 13 on the agenda. 13A is action correspondence. There's one piece of action correspondence. It's labeled 01-51, and it's from the Association of Ontario Road Supervisors. How does council wish to deal with that piece of business of action correspondence? So it's for more training and so on. Councillor Westgate?
I'll support it.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Manning? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, that takes us to 13B. 13B is, we've talked about this a little bit here, is the Lambton Group Police Services Board and representation updates. You can see within the report, the representation has changed. That we appreciate that the province has looked at that. We used to have 2 members for the entire Lambton County community, excluding Sarnia and Point Edwards. Now we're up to 6 representatives. And what has been stated is that we would share one with Brooke Alvinston, me and Warwick Township. And there's been some discussions around this as well. So in talking to everyone here, I've made a decision that I'm going to appoint Deputy Mayor John Kallenberg to serve on that police service board. It'll be a 2-year term it's a 4-year term, but 2 years for us and then 2 years for Brooke Alvinston. So what I'll do is I'm going to make a motion that Warwick Township Council appoint Deputy Mayor John Kallenberg to represent the municipality on the Lambton Group Police Services Board for a period of 2 years. Also part of that motion, I'd like a letter sent to Brooke Alvinston with us offering to fulfill the first 2 years of that term, and that staff be directed to update the council appointment bylaw to reflect this at the next regular council meeting if I have a seconder. Councillor Morris is seconding that. Any discussion on this piece of business, ladies and gentlemen? Councillor Westgate.
If it's Brooke's turn and the counselor from Brooke can't go to the meeting? Will John go to the meeting in his place?
So we really haven't, really, to be honest with you, it's during their 2-year term. That would be up to them to decide who is going to be there. My discussions with the mayor plans on sitting on this board. Which is, I mean, it's up to the municipality what they want to do when it comes to that. But no, I think that would be up to them to try to find somebody to fulfill that if there is a change. I don't know. There's really no room within the process to have a seconder. But the good news is there's still 5 other representatives on that board that we could still talk to at any time. So there's other communities that are representative, such as Plimpton, Wyoming will have their own representative. The town of Troy will have their own representative. It's based on population at the end of the day, how we came up with this. Danya, Famiana, Skellen, and Oil Springs will have a representative. And this just gives us a louder voice. Again, it used to be 2, period. And more public appointments. This actually gives us a little more control of our own destiny. As everybody knows, we do pay the freight for OPP costing in our community. So that just gives us that. Any other questions? Okay, did I have a seconder to that motion? I believe I did. Did I not? Yes. No other questions? And all we can do is send this to Brook Galveston Council, offering to fulfill the first 2 years of the term, which I believe starts in April of this year. So really, it's basically 3 months short of a 2-year term, but we will make the offer to do it first. And if there's any questions or comments about that, I'm more than happy to discuss that with the mayor of Brook Galveston if everybody's okay with that. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, let's go to 13C if we can, please. And that's a piece of business establishing a farmer's market in Warwick Township. And there is a recommendation there that Warwick Township Council approve the report, PD 24, and enter into an agreement with AZ Events to organize and facilitate the Watford Farmers Market. And there's also a recommendation to approve $1,000 budget that goes along with it. I will expect somebody on council is going to ask who A&Z is. That was the question I asked the clerk this morning. So maybe, Amanda, if you don't mind, can I ask you or maybe Stephanie to speak to this? I'll let you determine who that would be.
Thank you, Mayor Case. So A&Z Events is a company run in partnership with the local resident, Sahara Lila, and she does run 2 vendors markets every year here in the community at the ELCC, with proceeds going towards I believe the breakfast program at the elementary school. And she also recently, along with her partner, Amber Robinson, took over the Moonlight Madness this past December. So they were the folks that facilitated this event. And they actually approached staff last month with interest in establishing a market run similarly to how they do the vendor shows, where they would be in charge of all the insurance for the vendors. So the municipality would not be responsible for any of that. And they would enter into an agreement with ourselves as well as the Parks and Recreation Department for hosting. And this would be run differently than a traditional vendor market, where it would be focused primarily on agricultural produce, arts and crafts, baking, that sort of thing, with the focus being on Warwick Township producers and then expanding throughout that process.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Stephanie. Does anybody have any further questions on this? There's 2 pieces. Councilor Morris.
Yeah, Stephanie, where is it going to be? It says we're going to waive the rental fee for the facility. What facility are we talking about?
Thank you, Councillor Morris. That's a great question. So the idea is to have it down at Centennial Park. And whether it's within the pavilion area, that's the exact location will be determined between herself and our Parks and Recreation manager. In terms of the fee for the facility, the thought was if there's rain or inclement weather, that it could be moved inside the ELCC. So the request was whether the municipality would be willing to waive the rental fee should they have to move indoors. There are alternative options available that we could look into, but that was a recommendation that they had requested.
Thank you, Stephanie. Any other questions? I guess the only, issue with having to move inside would depending on rentals, right? If we had rentals that day and the facility is rented out on a very regular basis, which is good news for all of us. The $1,000 piece, maybe Stephanie, I could ask what the $1,000 would be used for. Again, it would be, she's asking, I guess, suggesting a grant from the municipality for 1,000. Maybe you could just let us know what the $1,000 would go towards, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Case. So the request had come in for the municipality to assist with promotions. So the thought was just for their pilot year for the first year to assist in getting the word out about the market because we are promoting our local producers and artisans, small businesses. The thought was $1,000 would be sufficient to advertise in some of the local publications such as the newspaper, tourism magazines and that sort of thing. So it would only be for the 1 year, for the first year. And that was just a recommendation based on some cost estimates.
Okay, well, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for Stephanie? Yes, Councilor Manning.
So would they be doing this for profit? Would AZ be doing this for profit or are they donating the money? So it is a profit organization. And then also a comment on the ELCC. I would prefer to see it. I mean, I like the idea under the pavilion and outdoors, but I don't think we should be holding that date for the entire summer in case they have weather that they have to cancel. I'd prefer to see it if they get rained out, they get rained out, and that's just the way it is.
Thank you, Councillor Manning. So yes, this is a for-profit business, and we are definitely open to any recommendations for how council would like to proceed in terms of the indoor space.
Councilor Manning, follow up.
And just especially going forward, just to see how big it is, because I mean, I don't want to hold the LCC for a year and have like 4 or 5 vendors there, you know what I mean? Like have a very small amount that they can accommodate somehow or another. So definitely just a trial there or trial run first.
Right. And so this year is a pilot project. So the thought was to start with a monthly market, just one night each month. So there would be a total of 4. And I know we did consult with our Parks and Recreation Department that there is alternative space depending on the number of vendors that possibly we could have it within the halls of the ELCC that would provide ample space as we had done for the 150th. So there are alternative options, I think, that we could easily accommodate.
Councilor Morris.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Manning. I'm no problem with the $1,000 to the startup fee, but as far as the building goes, I'd like to wait. Let's get the pilot year over with and to see how big it is before we tie up any rental space.
Ryan, did you want to make any comment? This is your facility that you manage. Just, I know you've been talking, obviously part of the team, but maybe any comments as far as the facility goes in space, perhaps?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Case. And those are 2 great points from Councillor Morris and Councillor Manning about holding the space. And in my conversations with Stephanie on this event as well, it wasn't necessarily that we would hold that date from any other bookings should any other groups want to book inside the ELCC. That's certainly an option for us. If somebody came to us, we would book that space out. And then as mentioned by Stephanie, there is other alternatives within the ELCC that should there be a rain date, we could accommodate them elsewhere, whether that's the Upper Arena Hall. The summertime, the ice is out on Thursday nights, although we do have ball hockey rentals on Thursday nights. So that necessarily wouldn't be an option. But we have a large hallway corridor space. But to the main point, we would not formally lose that option as a rental in the ELCC.
Okay, anybody else have any questions? I guess I have one. We just went through the budget process. It was a tight, tough budget. There's lots of places where we're obviously looking to amp up reserves and so on. I know it's only $1,000, but a question to the treasurer, can we accommodate $1,000 within our budget? I know it's not a lot of money, but it's a question I'd like clarification on. Is there some money in that budget for this type of promotion?
Under the community grants profile, we have a certain amount of dollars earmarked, and there's $6,775, I believe, unallocated, and that's where we would make the recommendation if it was council's decision to go that route.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? I guess just a comment. if it wasn't a not-for-profit, if it was a not-for-profit and part of the profits were going to a community group or whatever the case may be, I'd have no problem with $1,000 at the end of the day because it makes sense. But because this is profitable, it is a business where they're going to be making money. I guess I just question a little bit the $1,000 grant that goes along with it, since we're going to be offering up our facilities free of charge. I mean, we do charge for those facilities to everybody else. So that's just a question I guess I ask, and see what council's comfort level is with that. Again, we want to encourage growth, but at the same time, we are offering up our services free of charge when they're available, and $1,000 grant that goes along with it for a business that's for profit, not for profit. It makes a bit of a difference. So just wondering what council's feeling is on that. Westgate.
Well, I would be hoping that if we had a farmer's market like that, it would bring enough people in the town to help the other businesses out. And I think it would be good for Watford.
Anybody else? Yes, Councillor Manning.
So yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, I don't want to use the word in partnership, but we're kind of helping them out with the advertising and that. So what kind of benefits do you, Ryan or Stephanie, see this with our ECDEV and our Parks and Rec department? Do we have benefits helping them advertise with this?
Well, I think this is something that we would like to see start off successful and continue. And I mean, the amount of money that vendors are charged for a spot for the summer, and if you multiply that, let's say by 25, it really only brings in about $625 for the season. So while it is for profit, I think the amount of time that they put into organizing something like this and making sure all vendors have the proper paperwork, getting in everything that the municipality requires, I think at the end of the day is not a significant income amount that they would be getting in terms of what the municipality would be getting in benefit, bringing people into the community, people supporting our local businesses. Thursday nights are already a busy night at the recreation facilities in terms of the men's ball league as well as the women's ball hockey league. And I think that it would be a great opportunity for us to promote our local businesses who are there. And I'm hoping that maybe this could lead to future partnership opportunities, perhaps with the Optimist Club, where we could grow this into something bigger, similar to something maybe that Dresden has twice a year with a summer market and their Christmas market. So I think with this being a pilot year, we could start small and reevaluate at the end, but I think it would be nice to see some level of support to help kickstart this summer event.
Any other questions or comments on this particular piece of business? There's no doubt about it. Anything you can do to bring people into the community, try to promote the community is a good thing. And this particular lady who heads up this program in this company did a great job with Moonlight Madness this year. At the end of the day, it was done very, very well. What's council's wishes in dealing with this? I've read the recommendation, looking to see what the direction is. Yes, Councillor Manning.
I personally would like to support this. I'll make a motion based on the fact that the work that AZ does for us for other events in the community, as well as the potential that a market has to bring in agricultural goods and stuff like that and support other vendors and our local businesses too. So I'll make that motion for the $1,000.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Westgate, are you seconding? Very good, sir. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor? Oh, that is carried. Thank you. Okay, if we could go to D, and that's the pre-consultation development deposit for subdivision applications. And the recommendation is that Warwick Township Council approve the report P&D 0524 pre-consultation development deposit report, and that the Economic Development and Communications Officer be directed to undertake fee bylaw updates to include pre-consultation development deposit of $10,000 for plan of subdivision applications, and provides to council the approval at a future council meeting. So this was on one of our agendas not that long ago, and this has been brought back. What's council's feeling on dealing with this piece of business? Any questions? Councilor Morris.
Well, if I understand from when we talked about it before, we can get quite a bit of cost against us for people coming in with plans for subdivision and maybe never going through with it. We've seen that in the past. I'd like to support it and I make the motion to accept the recommendation.
Thank you, Counselor. Do we have a seconder? Counselor Manning is seconding that. Further discussion on this? Counselor Westgate.
Will there be a size limit for this? Like if somebody comes in with 4 houses? Or a whole subdivision?
I guess the question is what constitutes a subdivision?
Yeah.
What, do you want to speak to that or who would you like to speak? Trevor, please.
I jumped on that. Sorry about that. What it comes down to is scalability. End of the day, this is all going to be refundable for what's not used. So essentially that's covered for the size of the enterprise. The more complex enterprise, more likely we're going to have incur higher costs. But 9 times out of 10, if somebody comes in for 4 homes, we probably will not have any cost or be able to refund the bulk, if not all of this charge.
Mandy, would you add to that, please?
I would be glad to. Thank you. Further to Trevor's correct comments, the subdivision process can be waived for smaller redevelopments. Anything that is 3 to 4 homes would typically go through a site plan process rather than a subdivision process, so the fee wouldn't be applicable. There is a little bit of discretion, as I understand it, in the planning department if an application for a specific property was put in, say, for 5 or 6 homes, in order to determine which path, whether it be site plan or subdivision. So we would follow planning's guidance on those more minor items. And of course, any applicant always has the ability to request a fee adjustment or waiver through council. So if that ever did come up as a concern, we certainly could share it with council at the time.
Okay, any further discussion on this item? I'll call the question. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, that takes us to new business or notice of motion. Madam Clerk, maybe under new business, you maybe want to touch on our recording of our budget meeting. I mean, you had a couple other things, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Case. I did have a couple other verbal updates I wanted to add for council's information and public information that were not highlighted on the agenda. So I have 2 items. The first being I wanted to acknowledge that the YouTube recording of our special budget meeting, which was January 25th, did have some technical difficulties. None of us realized at the time, but we've been notified since from people looking to watch that meeting online. So the YouTube recording cuts out partway through, and we are working through our technical difficulties to try to retrieve the data and then repost to YouTube if we're able to. So I just wanted to make everyone aware in case they had questions. And if we are able to post it online, we will absolutely do so. That was item 1. My second item, if I may continue, was also additional public notice will be provided, but I did just confirm before the meeting today that the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing will be hosting 2 online information sessions coming up for our community on the disaster relief assistance program for Ontarians. That's the DREO program we applied for on behalf of our residents. So anyone who was impacted by the floods of August 23rd, who might be interested in submitting an application for funding to the province, will be able to attend those sessions. The sessions are scheduled for February 15th from 6:30 to 7:30, and that one will be for homeowners only. And then February 22nd from 6 to 7 p.m. And that one is for businesses and nonprofits. So we are working with the ministry to see if we can offer a hybrid in-person online kind of combination. And we're just waiting for all the information, but as soon as we have it, we will post later this week. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Amanda, for that. So anyways, that concludes our open session of today's meeting. We'll be stopping our recording at this time, and I'll be asking for a motion to go in camera. So I'm asking for a motion to move into camera meeting, to motion to move into an in-camera meeting of council pursuant to section 239 of Municipal Act 2001 as amended for the following reasons: 2, 3, and 11. Who would like to do the honors? Councillor Morris, Councillor Manning, all in favor? Thank you. That's carried. Thank you.